Good morning, everyone. This is Workshops for Moms. We are coming to you in the morning. Hopefully, get yourself a good morning beverage and join us for an hour of tips of beating the summer doldrums. Sometimes mid-vacation, we kind of run out of ideas, or we just need to reset, or sometimes just have a chat with other moms, which is what we're doing this morning. So I've got some wonderful guests who've got great ideas that I'm looking forward to hearing from. So my name is Tracy Cheney, and I will be the host this morning. And let me go around the circle here and have everyone introduce themselves. Jenna, would you like to start?
Yeah, I'm Jenna Jockus. I'm a landscape architect and nature play expert. My business is N is for Nature Play, where I help parents and educators create sensory-rich natural play and learning spaces.
Trees?
Patrice Porter, also known as the Gardening Grandma, because I love opening the world of gardening to folks, and especially to kids. And I'm the creator of Got Dirt Gardening for Kids, and also the Fabulous Family Futures program. We're helping families to not only the parents grow into their greatest potential, but the children too. Brighter futures.
And we have Michelle.
Hey everyone, I'm Michelle de Kaiser. I'm with Connecting Mamas, and we're all about just connection in terms of connecting to yourself, connecting to other women, connecting to your kids, connecting to your families again. How do we make that genuine connection actually happen without feeling this responsibility to do it, and to do it in a more fun and way of through curiosity? So I look forward to connecting more with you.
Michelle, can you speak up a little bit? I'm not sure if we need to come closer. And let's just do a little volume check here. There we go. We don't want to miss anything. Well, as I said, I'm Tracy Cheney, and I am getting ready for pre-K, and K is my big interest. So we've got, I will say that we're going to be talking a lot about kids under 12, teenagers, another issue, another show. So, you know, one of the things about summer vacation is travel. And travel is, I mean, it's great and it's fun, but it's not simple with kids, especially if you have really little ones. And Michelle, I'm going to start with you on this because I know that you just came back from a mega driving trip with your kids. Tell us about how you prepared and your one favorite thing. I know there's probably a lot, but at least let's everybody give their favorite travel tip with kids.
First of all, is my volume okay?
It's better, yes.
Okay. We just came back from a 2-week road trip through, actually ended up being 7 national parks, but 5,200 miles, 96 hours in the car, because the car actually tells you all these things. My husband likes to keep track of it. But there were a lot of rough patches. I mean, just arguing and fighting the dynamics between 5 different people and trying to navigate that. And we also did 3 overnight drives as well. So like the kids just adjusting to a new schedule and doing something and making road warriors out of them. And I think some of the key things that we do when we travel, especially because of the way we are always in and out of hotel rooms, we kind of pack in bins in the car. So we actually pack, we'll pack bags like for 2 or 3 days, and those come into the hotel room and we'll swap them out. But like all the extras just that. So you're not like taking everything into the hotel room each time. And so it's kind of rotating. And so there'll be days where we unload everything to repack. But however, I struggle with that. My husband and the kids are good at doing that. I struggle. So we just had one bag for me that just came in and out. So like, it's so like go with what works for you. But for the kids, it was really easy, like having them pick and choose. And number one thing to recommend is giving them packing lists and making them do it. Stop doing everything yourselves, moms. They can take a list. You can just say 4 pairs of jeans, 4 pairs of socks, or however how many you need. But we always just make a list, send it to them. They put it in a laundry basket. We double check it, which, you know, it takes 10 to 15 minutes with each kid. You miss some underwear, you miss this, go run upstairs, go grab that, and just stop doing everything yourself. That's my biggest tip of advice for like the pre-stuff. Like we always do these things and we're like, we have to do it all. Understand when they're babies and stuff, but as soon as they can start, I mean, my youngest is 7. She can pack it all by herself now. I mean, with the list and double checking it. But like we've been doing that since she was really little too. So it's just starting them off small, and just we need to stop saying we have to do everything and let them be in charge of their clothes and let them learn from some of the mistakes. I mean, there've been a time my daughter forgot pants. One daughter forgot one shoe, brought the other one. I mean, they start to learn these things and they figure it out. I mean, but it's those natural consequences where we can't just do everything for them. So that's the pre-packing. And the one that, as you said, one of the things to bring for the kids, and again, to help them keep off the screens. My son doesn't like as much. It's harder for him because he struggles in the car. But for the girls, we have what I call an activity pack. And so it's like, it's one of those bags that attaches to the back of the seat, comes down, and they can put a tablet there if they want to watch it. But really, we use it for coloring books and those types of things. There's a platform for them to write on. There's a little cup holder if they need it. And then I'll put the link in the replay, but underneath there's a pouch for, because I actually researched this. We had to do a road trip during COVID to go see my dad. And that's what actually started all our long drives. I think it's 30-hour road trip to Seattle to visit him during COVID because we didn't want to fly with everybody. And that's why I bought these for and really researched it, because I wanted them to be able to do something besides just watch TV or just complain about everything. And so my girls will be back there coloring and stuff. And I print out a whole bunch of activity bags. You know what? I made those bags once. They just go straight to the basement when they're done for the trip. And then they get to bring them back out right before the trip, see if there's some other books or something they want in there. But a lot of stuff is just not done. So it's not like you're redoing it every single time. I don't even touch them anymore. I did them that one time and the girls are in charge of them now. And so it's finding those things that you can do as a mom to be hands off on it. Now, in terms of all the arguing that takes place, one thing that I did do beforehand, which was not arguing, probably because I did do it freehand, not that other things didn't arise, was we'd have a DVD player in the car, and they do like to watch movies together. I know some people have individual things or stuff, but for us, this was just me thinking, what problems do they fight over? And they always fought over which movie they're going to watch and when. So what I did as we were packing was we brought all the DVDs in the house, and we just had each kid take turns picking the movies in the order they'd be watched. So each one got a turn. And so they just went in the car in that order, because I was just trying to problem solve what are some of the biggest things they fight about. So honestly, you guys had heard how many hours were in the car. They only ended up watching 3 movies that entire time.
Wow.
They
96
knew which
hours.
movies were coming or what, but they didn't really fight over it. What we did end up doing was a lot more audiobooks. They really got into listening to the audiobooks, and we listened to the Genius Files, and Bella had done the Wings of Fire. And so they're listening to a lot of audiobooks. Plus, I also recommend in the national parks, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but we had a guide. So he goes along with your GPS, and he would tell you about the next stops, where to stop, where good things to do. And we had him for almost all the different national parks here, except for Sequoia. And so that was helpful to like know when to stop and where to go. And so they were learning a lot about the parks and things like that through the digital guide. It was an app. Again, I'll put the links in the replay with the video. So I can't remember off the top of my head.
No,
But
that's interesting.
it's more just those pre-planning and when episodes do come up, because I will give you one of the really worst examples that happened on the trip. This is probably the worst of them all. Not that they didn't happen a lot, but my daughter, this last day, the youngest was just really, really tired. And we were done river rafting, and she had a really good time for the most part, but she got really cold and just kind of got into that anxious mode. And she's in that defiant mode where as soon as you say you have to do something, nope, not going to do it. But that turns into a 45-minute tantrum. And so my husband started, ran to the bathroom, and then at one point he was carrying her over her shoulder to put him into the changing room. And I tried to take her with me into the girls' changing room, wouldn't change. So I'm sitting outside the men's room holding her Crocs as I see men going in and out as she's screaming. I don't even know exactly what she's screaming, but she's complaining about not wanting to put her clothes on. She wants to stay in her wet bathing suit. And some of the men come in and were like, can't believe it. One of the guys came by, he's like, where do you want them be? And you could just hear that screaming and that stuff. And I think that my husband got really upset and was really angry. And so it's like, at least I was outside and I can did my best to keep my composure and calm and just kept breathing so that I knew it was going to be my turn next to try to take the next step. And I think it's being proactive in that. There is one time where I did walk out of the restaurant because I was annoyed with what my husband said, but that was the only time I did that. But I think knowing that they're going to be tired, knowing they're going to be doing something, and no matter what we do, we switched our schedules. They were getting up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, but we were out till like 10 o'clock at night, California time, changing time zones for us. That's 2 hour difference, and just doing the most out of every park. And you think they're doing really well, and then they hit that witching hour. And it's almost just knowing it's going to come. And you almost have to brace yourself if that's what, because I mean, it's like we put ourselves in that situation because we kept them out. We could have brought them back sooner. We could have made those plans, but they're having so much fun doing all those things. And that seems to happen a lot on vacation because you're like, they're doing so well. And you're like, okay. And then you realize, well, you still have another hour to the next hotel, or you still have this. And all of a sudden, that's when the meltdowns start because they're just so exhausted. And it's what do you do in those situations? And so it's thinking that ahead. And for us, my husband just wants to keep going. So it was me knowing that I'm going to have to deal with that no matter what, because it just didn't seem to quite work out that we'd get there in time. But for those of you that want to pre-plan, like knowing that witching hour is coming and knowing, what do your kids need in that moment? Because it is off their routine, it is off their schedules, and you can't necessarily predict all of it. But you can think about some of the things that you need, extra snacks. And so finally we got her eating after that incident in the bathroom, and she started to do a little bit better, just slowly, like she didn't want to eat. We suggested that right away, but she didn't want to. And it's just it requires a lot of patience and looking at the intention that you use the word vacation. Let's be realistic, ladies. These aren't vacations. These are family, adventure, and memory making. And let's keep that in mind. Like these are the moments that they're going to remember. This is what we're building. This is what we're making. And give yourself that day afterwards. Give yourself that one day vacation when you get back.
Yes, that's what I need. How about you, Jenna? What's your favorite item for traveling?
Well, mine isn't an item that you pack or a way to pack, but mine is a way to think of the trip itself. And Michelle just hit on it. I like to think of every trip as an adventure, right? And my husband might have some different thoughts about that. He likes to get in the car and we'll get there at a certain time, and he is flexible and can be very adventurous himself, no doubt about it. But there are things, as Michelle said, that happen along the way, and to have it framed as an adventure gives you that ability to be more flexible, to take stops that you didn't necessarily intend, and just to go about it in a different mindset. We've traveled since the girls, I've got twins, they were 18 months old, and one of our first trips was, I think they were 2.5 at the time. We went to Portland, Oregon, which is about an 8-hour drive for us. And as really tired parents of twins, we weren't paying attention to the car, and it actually ran out of gas on the freeway in the gorge, if anyone knows where that's at. So not a really pleasant place to be, and it was fairly hot. And so, well, my husband was dealing with trying to call someone to get gas. I'm like, okay, this is an adventure. I'm going to take these 2.5-year-old twins. We're going to go find a shady place to play. So we just found a place down the way. We landed in a really lucky spot, and we spent an hour there just playing in the shade, looking at the trees, and it was out of the side of the road. But the girls and I had such a blast. And that could have been a situation where we both as parents could have been very anxious about it. But as Michelle said, if you can take a moment to get your composure and to reframe it in a different way, then it's a totally different scenario. The girls had so much fun. They had no idea that this was an unintended stop. The other thing I would say is along the way on your stops, take the time to get the kids outside as much as possible. And if you can, get them to sit on the ground and get their feet on the ground. That way they connect with the earth and get kind of recharged and calm down. It just really helps with everyone's nervous system. And so if you can do that at points along the way, just take a moment to ground in nature, then that is going to put everyone back into a really calm state when they get back into the car. That's really important. And that's about all I have to say on that, because it's so important.
And Patrice, what about you? What's been your favorite thing? You have a mom and grandma, so
I've got to ditto everything that Michelle and Jenna said, that definitely that seeing it as an adventure and keeping that attitude and the flexibility that if you can, so you're not always rushing. You do not want to be rushing. This is supposed to be a vacation and a chance to explore. Like I remember our family vacations, we would stop at it if there was any lookout points or if there is a nice park or we would stop and it was never about rushing. Like there was a few times we would have like a final destination for the day that we kind of wanted to go to, but it like as long as we could get to a campground, we traveled with a tent trailer. And so that we just needed to have a campground. That's all we needed. And that would be the place that we would stop. So if we got delayed, then you would just pick a closer campground. And with that, having it be an adventure and taking that time to explore, and it's a really good time to model curiosity with your kids. Like if they've been locked in schools and on their screens, it's a different kind of mindset or whatever. And like just getting out there and start to, hey, look at this. I have never seen a bloom like that before. Or what's this strange looking bug? And, and then you can do the research, have them research when you're traveling to find out more about it. And also like building your sense of observation there, like asking questions. What is it that you hear, and what is it that you see here? Start to ask more questions, get them into the mode of asking more questions. Like sometimes your parents might think kids ask too many questions, but really it's wonderful to be able to develop that, sense of wonder and being able to ask all those questions, and just it builds a depth of character. And one of our favorite games, like we always had our activity pack, but we always played the game I Spy with My Little Eye while you're traveling in the car. And so you're trying to pick that out, or singing songs. We used to love sing songs. That was a great family thing.
So we have,
I'd bring up here too, the idea of having like a staycation, camping in your background, like just in your backyard, just to kind of break the kids into the idea of camping, or picking like parks that are closer to you for a day, a day's journey, and just to break the kids into the idea of traveling and exploring, camping, get them out camping away from the screens.
so
Can I add one thing though? I
Yeah.
just wanted to piggyback off what Patrice was saying, and kind of gave me an idea of realizing that, essentially these trips are also about just connecting more as a family. And so like I said, that another day, which I forgot to mention, was that we did take a time out, and the kids were just at each other, and my husband almost looked at like, we're going to turn around, we're just going home, we're not. And what we ended up doing that morning was I made them actually kind of almost stand in the background, made them all sit in the same bed and kind of almost hug it out and just keep chatting by Lily screaming. But eventually they pull it together enough that like, we don't want to go home. We want to do this. And so it's like taking those moments to say, okay, what are you guys going to do? Putting it back on them, that it's not just always on the parents to do these things. And so they kind of brought it together and decided they want, and that was the day we were supposed to go to Sequoia and Kings Canyon. Well, we only made it Kings Canyon because by the time all this happened, but as you said, Patrice, taking it slow, they ended up climbing through a big Sequoia tree almost that time, like it was a cave. And so it's like taking those moments, but realizing like, if you have to cut something out because their connection's more important than seeing the next thing.
Yeah,
Totally.
we've heard of some of the things that you've used, like in the car, like entertainment kits, packing cubes or baskets for the kids to be in charge of. I've said one thing with my grandkids that I thought was fun. their mom took them to the dollar store ahead of the trip, which I didn't really shop at the dollar store. The kids thought that was awesome. So they had a little allowance money. They could buy what they wanted. And that they love that stuff more than all the nice educational toys. They love that stuff. And also the snacks were a lot cheaper than stopping at the gas station. And then I want. So then they were in control of, they made all those decisions. And if you didn't like something, well, it was from the dollar store and it wasn't a great loss. And so we've been talking here about, well, these are all involved car trips. And of course, we've had plane trips and those kind of things. So, taking a stuffed animal, whatever it is that they need. But of course, these days, we have entertainment on screens. So I wanted to discuss with you a bit about screen use, because in the summertime, I know, as I say, grandkids, it's fabulous babysitter, but, we all are hearing, of course, lots of things about screen use. And it seems like in the summertime, it increases. And on a trip, you guys were listening to audiobooks, but it's pretty nice too, to be able to give everybody a screen, because you know what? They're quiet. And it's amazing how quiet. So let's talk a little bit here about that, because I think I don't want to say it's a temptation, but it's something that's going to be there in the summer. If we were, before we talk about that, but because I do want to have a good discussion about that, one of the ways that we can counteract that is planning for spaces in your home for playrooms or whatever. So how have you been handling screen use, or the desire? Because these things are meant to make you want it, whether you like it or not, but they are designed to make you want it. So how have you set things up at home? How are you dealing with screens? Jenna, would you like to start off on that?
Sure, yeah. And just to give everyone some more numbers on screen time for our age group, the average per week per day is that kids spend 6 hours a day on a screen, and that was probably averaged out over the school year and summer and that sort of thing. And then the average time they spend outside per day is 6 to 7 minutes. And so if you take that out over just a week long, that's the equivalent of basically a full-time job on a screen for these kids, and less than an hour outside in the week. And so we really want to flip those numbers on their heads and get the kids outside, because there's so much value. I speak on this topic, until I turn blue in the face, on the value for children to spend time out in nature, whether it's their backyard or a walk in the park or at the beach with you or wherever it is. They just need more time to connect with nature outdoors, because there's so much that is of value for them. There's a lot of things that I would recommend that parents can do that's really easy to help kids get outside. And the first and foremost thing I would say is to give them just some simple materials to build a little fort outside. You can take an old blanket, you can take a couple chairs outside, you can use some branches, you can use, I don't know, the railing on your deck to, attach part of the blanket to, whatever. You and they can be really creative on how they can build this little fort. And of course, I would invite you to build something more permanent as well, because then it becomes a space that they can go to all the time, all day long, in any weather, and just have some space for themselves outside. I call these cozy spaces, and they help kids do a number of things. Say if you have a child who perhaps has, experiences neurodiversity, maybe they go into sensory overload. These are spaces that they can go to calm their nervous system and to kind of get back into a balanced state, so they can get back to doing all those wonderful things that they want to do. And it gives them me time to read a book, to doodle in their notebook, to just sit and observe their surroundings. There's so many things that cozy spaces achieve for children. And so I recommend them in all children's spaces. And of course, you can build them inside. My kids are like blanket fort masters in the house here. And it's just like, I know my living room's going to be trashed for at least, half a day, but that's okay because they have been taught also to help put things away. So it just is less on me. The other thing is, there's so many other things to recommend, but
Yes.
I would
This is a show
say
unto itself.
it totally is. Another quick thing is, if you've got a old pot sitting around, what if you planted some herbs or a cherry tomato or something like that? Get them involved with creating a little edible garden space at home. And then that way they have the plants that they are tending, put them in charge of watering, put them in charge of harvesting, whatever it is. And that will actually encourage them to eat better, eat more healthy, and definitely plant the things that that they love. Do they love cucumbers? Well, plant a little cucumber vine next to the fence. Give something that is interesting that they've never tried before. Have they ever tried basil? Have they ever tried this other kind of lettuce? Just let them experiment and perhaps even let them pick what it is that they want to plant. And I know it's a little late, but for herbs and lettuces and radishes and all those sorts of things, those things grow so fast. You can plant them and harvest them within a couple of weeks. So there's lots of things that you can still do now that kids are going to be able to interact with and eat later on in the summer. So really fun process.
Patrice, how are you handling screens with grandkids?
Well, I am all about getting kids out of cyberspace and bringing them back into the natural world. And with going off of what Jenna said, having them creating a garden, and also for the parents. If you're doing this gardening or being out with nature and exploring, it can reawaken that sense of wonder and awe in you. So let the kids, let them express that they've got kind of that natural awe and wonder. And that's why, I describe it as opening the world of gardening. And it's because of that awe and wonder. It's all new. There's so much happening. There's so much to explore. And partake in that. And it's just as good for the adults as it is for the kids, for relieving stress, for anxiety, like mental health, physical health, even your spiritual well-being. And I know it is getting later, with the idea of forts, having a sunflower, fort that they can have and go in there, and adults have your own little cozy spot out in the garden too, or even if you have a big enough area or adventurous enough that, tree forts. Because I live right in the forest. My kids grew up here in a forest community, so they're always making forts, tree forts, and like my granddaughter, we made a little fort for her. It was with pallets for the walls, and then my son, her dad had got some plastic sort of big interlocking tiles or whatever that created a perfect roof that had it was from a playground or something, I don't know, and it had circle windows in, and she calls it her clubhouse, and it's for kids only. Unless you get a special invitation, then you can come in. But her and her friends have a great fun there. And one thing, a book I'd like to recommend is Vitamin N by Richard Love. That gives you all sorts of ideas of getting it's the essential guide to a nature-rich life, and 500 ways to enrich the health and happiness of your family and community and combat nature deficit disorder. So that, if you're short of ideas, that'll take care of that. And
Well, just on even a practical sense, I mean, I've heard that kids actually need to get dirty. They actually need to dig in the dirt, that helps their immune systems. And,
Yes.
you know, we have all of this taking fake vitamin D, but if you actually go out in the sunshine, that is not really a harmful thing in 20 minutes, you know, that we actually need to be in real sunshine, you know, just for our personal well-being. So there, you know, it's all, there is a design to it that, you know, is good for us. Well, Michelle, how are you dealing with screens this summer?
Well, I want to take a step back from like just we have so many different ideas of what we can do with our kids, and then we all of a sudden have those, I should do this, right?
Mm.
So I want to just take a step back and as you're thinking about screen time, I want you as a mom to inventory what are your interests, what are your kids' interests, and using that as a segue to get them off the screens. So for instance, my son, who it took a while, but figuring out that he loves cooking. On his own this week, he's 12, he meal planned the entire week and has been cooking dinner the last 3 nights. Like that was on him, but I think it was because we've been cultivating this interest in him, and he's been out. He actually took gardening grandma's class, and he's out doing his garden. And he actually, I had the girls at Cub Scout camp this weekend. I was gone with him for 2 days. He was on his own. The first day, I didn't even know he did this. He created a website. Again, that is screen, I do admit, to sell microgreens. But then he went around the neighborhood and started asking he had actually done samples during the Easter break, and then he went to the neighborhood. And the reason why I say this is because I keep looking, like I give myself a hard time, like, oh, I'm creating this business, I'm doing this. But this is because I'm going after my own interests and things, he's inspired to go after his. So I want to go back to let's get them off the screens by really spending time and really honing in on what are they interested in. Like my 2 daughters love to color and paint. So if I put paints outside or something, they're there. So it's making sure that you're paying attention and seeing what is going to intrigue them to get outside, and not just say, oh, I need this idea, or I need this book, or I need this, but to really just listen to your gut and say, they really enjoy this. Let's try to integrate this outside. Let's go read some books. Let's go tell some stories. And again, I was thinking about the card games is we started a game. It's almost like categories. They call it I forgot what they call it, but they were doing different countries, and whatever the letter ended with, you try to find another country or another place. And then I got bored with that, so I said, let's do foods. And we were even playing it with the 4 girls on the way to Cub Scout camp yesterday. And so I think it's just keep experimenting, but when you find something they're interested in, keep instilling that and inspiring them to keep after that. Because it took quite a while to instill my son's love to cook, and it was a lot of work to like cook alongside of him. Now he can do it on his own. And to see that, and I think that's what it comes down to, is us listening to what they want to do and providing those opportunities. That's what's going to get them away from the screen times, because they're going to be more engaged with their interests.
Well, and that brings up in the house, if you can have a playroom or a space that's dedicated to their interests. And so coming from me, art teacher, the art materials need to be out all the time. It doesn't have to be a grand thing, but really your kids for the summer, you know, we talk about losing skills in school. Well, part of that, keeping that up and all of that, developing the thinking that doesn't get so developed in school, because school is very left brain. And this is not a criticism, but that's what we've said. We need you to spell and do math and write and, you know, have good vocabulary, all left brain activities. But kids actually live more in their right brain, and we need to make sure we're nurturing that in the summer. We've talked about all of these great ideas, but also maybe you don't have a yard, but in their space, like we said, a cozy space, but even in the house, you know, you have your reading area, or you have an area where you can calm down and be yourself, even if it's a tent, a blanket tent. But the art materials, it doesn't have to be, and not even coloring books, but just paper and pencils and crayons. That is a natural activity of children, and we need to make sure that they are having that. So any time that's spent on screen, they need to also be doing all of that fine motor skills, because it's actually related to their thinking development too. So I can't emphasize enough scribbling. Your little ones starting at 2 and 3, if they show an interest, just give them a few things. They don't need a lot. And in a children's space too, they do need to have some time to move around because they are sitting so much more than any generation, and they need to be able to move around. So we kind of need to get the clutter, because like growing up, our playroom was just a clutter, tons of stuff all over the floor and all. But if we can pick that up so they can move around and choose things or put things away for a while and bring them back out, really is truly stimulating their brain development, right?
Yep.
So the thing about screens, and we're all hearing more about it, and education is having to use them in education because we're educating the kids via screen. So now we have to deliver education in little bits and entertainment and all of that. But what's been really interesting to me, that what the developers figured out is how to keep kids on screens. It's a fix like sugar. Is that's what AI is coming out of. They've learned that to keep us adults on the screens too. We have that issue. AI is coming out of all of that psychological development. So I think if we as parents, rather than, like Michelle said, rather than shoulds, we are, just like you're monitoring sweets, we are monitoring this for our kids and making sure that they are developing as they need to be developing. So that is great summer work for preparation for coming back to school. And sometimes, we have tutoring and we have other things that go on in the summer too, but just put out those basic tools of childhood, and the kids will take over it. You don't have to, you are not there to teach them how to do it. They'll do it. So I wanted to touch. Oh, good.
Something in here that what you're saying, the children do it. That's a big thing. Let them have spontaneous play. Like, too often we want to structure everything. And like in the summer, you might find times the kids are saying, I'm bored, and it could be like maybe they're a little bit afraid to, jump into something new, but at those times, if you've got like a PlayStation outside or something to draw them out there, I'm always get the kids outside for summer. Heavens, we live up north, so our winters are really long, so we really like to take advantage of our summers. And but that, let them have that spontaneous play, and let them experience that boredom, but having like those PlayStations or whatever. We used to call it, like in the pre-K play and exploration program, setting up invitations. It's like things for them to explore, and you'll be surprised what they might get into.
Yeah, I would second that, or third that. I as much as parents, we don't want to hear the I'm bored thing, because sometimes we feel like we have to come up with the next thing to do. That's actually a good sign, because that means they have exhausted everything they know how to do and or want to do. And so when they're bored, that is the moment where their imagination will start to take over. And children's imagination is their superpower. And so when they're bored, that's a great sign, because they're about to launch into something with their imagination taking the reins. And so we want that. And so give them the time and the space to be bored. It's totally okay.
Boredom
And
is
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Boredom is good, believe it or not.
Mhm. Totally.
Because then they're going to, like you say, they will start activating their problem solving abilities to solve this problem for themselves.
Yep. Their curiosity and wonder that Patrice was just mentioning a little bit ago.
Mhm.
Yep. That's within boredom.
Sometimes I think the boredom triggers us more than the kids, because we don't want them to be. And so I think it's just looking at ourselves as like, just check in with yourself to see if it's you that's responding more, and maybe just even ignoring their comment and letting them go up. And I think it's the same thing when we're having conversation with them and there's an uncomfortable silence, getting comfortable with those and letting them explore their feelings and stuff. Same thing with the boredom, is giving them space for them to do it rather than us jumping in and taking over for them.
Well, I guess I'm of a vintage where, you know, the beginning of the day, it was like, go outside. I'll see you back at dinner. Mud pie bakeries and inventing plays and doing all of that stuff, and really having the freedom of independent play. And that hasn't changed as far as a human need, that we really, kids do need to have independent play, that they are making all the decisions themselves rather than the adults making the decisions.
Yeah.
But I did want to touch, Patrice, you had wanted to jump in there for a sec.
One other point with boredom that I'd read this once, that I found it really interesting, a different look on what boredom could be. It's often you find you're bored when you're being like selfish and self-centered. And so if you look at that for the like being a mother, you'll never be bored. You will never be bored. There's always something that you're taking care of someone. So like maybe do something for your community. You know, take the kids, like, hey, you know, I saw a lot of trash along the ditches. Why don't we just go and pick up, and we can make it like a scavenger hunt too while we're at it. And or helping like with the seniors, like I like that intergenerational relationships, and like seniors that can't handle their yard work anymore, or I love to get the kids like gardening with seniors, and they're doing more of the work or whatever. The seniors might not be able to do it the same, but it starts that intergenerational relationships too. That, and yeah, so I just wanted to add that with that.
I love that.
So I'm going to ask you, what's been the frustrating thing this summer, and how you're dealing with it? And maybe you've solved it, or you might be in progress. So could be a frustrating day, or just a frustration that you're having with kids being home. Now, homeschool parents deal with this all the time, but when this is our vacation time, our time off, what's been a frustration this summer? Patrice, have you had any?
I feel like we're just starting our summer. So
Well, that's true, because you are in Canada.
Yeah.
That's true.
yeah,
I think
and
the
like
frustration has been more that we're not on vacation yet.
yes, that's what it is. And I mean, we had things like, because it's now like I have to travel to go see my granddaughter, and having car difficulties, or when there's times when, you know, you've made plans and something comes up and it doesn't work out. And, you know, but dealing with that, calling on community, you know, when you had car troubles, it's like, well, is anybody else going down to the city, you know, that maybe I'd catch a ride, or my son can catch a ride back up here, or they took out the bus routes here. Like you can't even catch a bus. Like, anyways, there's another frustration and complaint. I don't want to go down that road, but that.
But it's trying to get to have time with your grandchild.
Yeah,
That's your frustration.
Yeah.
Jenna, anything been a frustration this summer that you're working to solve?
You know, just there's in the summer, for me at least, because I'm a big gardener, there tends to be this feeling of easily overwhelmed by things, because I have my work to do. I have the kids to take care of and tend to their needs and wants, and fun things that we all want to do. And then I want to get outside and garden because I've got this beautiful sensory garden. We have this little farm, and there just is not enough time in the day or energy in my body and spirit to do all of the things every day. And so that is just kind of a daily thing I deal with, because I want to make the most of our summers. They're beautiful here where we're at in Spokane. So it's a daily juggling act of what's most important that day, and to be able to genuinely let go of the other things and be okay that right now the sensory garden looks like heck because I haven't been out there to do the weeding and to pull out all the grass that's growing 4 foot tall right now. But right now that's okay because I've got a few priorities with work, and then I'm going to take my kids swimming this afternoon at my dad's house. So that's what I'm prioritizing. That's what I'm honoring and embracing. And I'm just letting the other nonsense go. It's okay. It'll be there for another day. But it can be really challenging as moms because we think we need to do all the things and all the things really well. And if we don't, there's that feeling of failure that kind of creeps in, and it's just kind of a nagging little pain in my ass. So that's another thing I just get to let go of. But it's a daily dance. But it's a lifetime dance too, isn't it, ladies?
Well,
It can,
eventually the kids
it
grow
can
up
be.
and
Yeah.
they'll go to college. They may come back and stay with you and live with you. You may have a 4-year
Yeah.
break there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
that's what I'm dealing with, ladies. And it's I don't know. I guess it's a good thing because it really gets me clear on what are my priorities for the day. And in the long run, what I really want to do is create a home and a home environment and atmosphere where my kids feel cherished, and they don't notice the grass that's 4 foot tall in the backyard that needs to be pulled out. They don't give a rat's what about that. What they notice and what they will take into adulthood is, my gosh, my mom made time for me. She was present for me. And we got to go swimming as much as we wanted. We got to go do this, that, and the other thing. And they felt loved. And so that's really, when it comes down to it, that's always priority one for me. And so that kind of makes some of the other choices pretty easy.
Well, and just to say, while you're in motherhood, just like you notice from babies, and that phase was over, when they hit elementary school, it just zooms by. Now,
It does.
you have teenagehood coming up, which will
I know.
different phase, and then everything shifts and it's back
Yeah.
to your time. So this
Yeah.
is just a phase of your life.
Yep.
And they're teens may not be as involved with you right now. It's all this wonderful time of when they're in the elementary years, and they just change so much and it goes by really fast, just like diapers eventually went away. That was not my favorite phase. Michelle, how about you? What's been your frustration this summer, and how have you been dealing with it as mom with kids home for summer?
As I've been listening to everyone talk, kind of Coke is what my problem was, and I feel like it's wanting the perfection of the day. And I know in my head, I'm like, we're not perfect. We're okay, still gonna get angry, but it's like not wanting the fight, not wanting, the bickering between them, and wanting that just to go away. And so I think it's kind of like trying to work on refocusing and what does the imperfect look like a little bit, and not always saying like everything has to go completely right. Because I mean, as I reflect on the trip as well, I mean, there was a lot of bickering stuff, but there was actually one really great day. We were actually in Bryce Canyon, which is ironic because it was the one canyon my husband and I, one of the ones we had been to before we had kids. And we'd only been there for like a couple hours, but it was one that just always stuck in my head. Like I want to get back to it. And we went horseback riding for 3 hours in the morning, and my butt was sore for 3 days. Another story. But even after that, we ended up being out to like probably 8 or 9 that night. We took another 3-mile hike after that. And the kids were just having so much fun. They were walking ahead of us, and Bella was in the middle. My middle child was in the middle, and they made her Alexa. And so they just kept asking questions as if she was Alexa the entire time. And like my husband and I were just like, we're going to stay way over here, let them have their time. And so like that was nothing I would have ever pictured. But then when I look at like that wouldn't have happened if we didn't go through all the other stuff to get to that moment. And so I want to focus more on those and know that we have to go through the other stuff to get to days like.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, and I think Bryce is particularly magical. I had rented an RV and took my grandkids. Talk about, at least an RV, it was a little bigger. But when we got to Bryce, that just had an impact. I mean, they were selling their toys to passerbyers to make money, to go to do stuff. I mean, I don't know what it is about Bryce. And you just want to go back to Bryce. We've just been eager to get back there. It's so funny. So you touched on, you had a magical day. So kind of thinking about the summer, and I know that's a lot to think about, but have you just had a really great day where everything fell into place? And why did it fall in place? Michelle, you just touched on it a little bit, that you let the kids be and you step back. So is that
I stepped back, but it's also realizing that, again, because I mean, we had to go through those other moments of them arguing with each other and stuff, and then realizing they had to come to the realization that they want to keep this trip going, that they want to have some fun. Like, it can't be all on us to do everything for them. And sometimes we feel like we just want to fix everything. And so I think it's just coming to that at moments, especially as they're getting older. I mean, elementary ages, like, I want, even if they are bickering, I don't want to jump in right away, because they need to start problem solving. They need to start figuring out, but my body wants to. I'm like, nope, got to stick back. And I think it's learning those stages of where they're at. And every summer it's going to change. And it's going to take that time in the beginning. I mean, we basically jumped in the car as soon as they were out of school. So we've barely been back. So like our whole summer has been just on the road so far. And then jumped back into a family reunion, and then jumped into the girls went to summer camp this week, the two of them, and I had to go 2 days. I went the last 2 days. So they've been out in nature like nonstop, which is a good thing, but I can see the tiring on Lily from it, and seeing that, but then just making sure they got to bed a little bit earlier and doing those things to help keep it going. So she got out the door really well today, and I got a day off.
And why we were sent out to play all day. That's how our moms got their days off, because they didn't have microwaves and all that stuff. They had to actually fix tuna casserole back in the 60s. Jenna, there just been a day that was just a remarkable day this summer. And
Oh,
how did that get structured?
well, it was just last week. I had wanted to take the girls hiking to this place called Tubbs Hill in Coeur d'Alene, just like, 15 miles from my house. And it's this beautiful little peninsula on Lake Coeur d'Alene, and it's pretty fun. It's not an easy hike per se, but it's right downtown. So we went and we hiked, and we got to play by the lakeshore, and we took our time, and it's like it's probably a 1.5 mile hike around this little peninsula, but it took us 2.5 hours to do, because we took all the little side trails and excursions, and they want to see that and that sort of thing. So I left the hike really flexible, because I knew they'd want to do this. But then I treated them to, once we got done with the hike, it was really hot. We went and got gelato, and it was their first time having gelato, which, like any type of ice cream, they're just bananas over. So that was really fun. But in between the two, we had this really fun picnic in this beautiful park right near Tubbs Hill. And so it was just kind of a day to totally unplug. And it literally took us all day long to do this. And we just had so much fun connecting and telling stories and noticing things, and all the different critters and native plants in bloom that we saw in Tubbs Hill, the ocean spray or mountain spray, whatever you call it, and was just like at its peak bloom. And so it looked like our hiking trails were just full of these puffy white flowers all over these huge shrubs. I mean, it was just so fun. And one of my daughters, she's really into fairies and whatnot. She's like, oh my gosh, as the next little hidey hole that we come to on the trail, this little cave in the rock, she's telling all sorts of stories about what sorts of creatures are living there and what sorts of fairies and gnomes are living there. And so it's just really fun just to have a day that was sort of structured. We knew that there are things we wanted to do, but it was filled with all sorts of spontaneity and stories and memory making and that sort of thing. So yeah, lovely. Very lovely.
And Patrice, you said summer hasn't really started for you guys yet, but maybe there was a day where you just did everything right that stands out in your thought.
Well, the times coming when my granddaughter's up here and we go exploring in the woods here in the forest, and just my granddaughter loves fairies too, and finding the mushrooms, or there'd be like squirrel holes or these moss beds, and it was all about fairy homes, and this could be a fairy home and this could be a fairy home, and we both share a love of photography too. So like seeing everything became like the macro shots, and the everything becomes a perfect shot or whatever. And there's just so much magical stuff happening back there. Like we even found a pink lady slipper, which was just fascinating. Like, and
It's a plant, correct?
Yeah. So type of orchid. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I feel very fortunate because I live right in the forest. So I just step out my door and I can go hiking in the forest, and doing that with my granddaughter. Like she lives in the city, so when we can do that when she comes up here. Like my son, he grew up exploring in the forest, and there's also a lake at the end of the road, and it was a whole community thing, and we'd be building our homes together. The kids would be off playing, in the forest doing their thing, and they would also be making different little forts and trying different building type of material. But at the end of the day, we would end our day down at the lake, and everybody would go in we used to go for skinny dipping. Just that's the type of community we were. It was just, we worked together, but the kids all played together. There was like kids, the neighborhood kids played together and down at the lake there, and it was just a perfect day for ending it. And the community that worked together, and the kids modeling what the parents were doing as we were building. They were building their forts, and yeah, so that's my perfect days, is in the forest with my grandkids, sons, whatever. Yeah.
And thank you for all of that. And you all live in wonderful areas. And I just want to say to parents that live in an urban area like I do in Los Angeles, part of my fun things have been taking grandkids to lessons and watching them grow. And from swimming lessons to dance to gymnastics. It sounds very structured, but it did give structure to our day, to like, okay, at 1 o'clock we have swimming lessons, so we could do that. But watching them progress was just really so fun. Now they're big and teens, but that was just a part of being a grandparent, but being able to provide that. And we just never got tired of watching. So part of that, and though you parents are involved in the team sports and all of that, I mean, eventually all that ends. It's like, and it may surprise you, it goes abruptly maybe, but all of that, I just really valued being able to just watch their growth and be part of that. Well, everybody, we are at the end of a wonderful hour of mom tips. If you're feeling overwhelmed or underwhelmed by summer, or it's just going swimmingly, and here's some other things to do if you're thinking of going on a road trip with kids. These were all wonderful ideas. I'd like to invite our everybody, our panelists, to stay on for just a minute when we stop recording, so we can do a fast little roundup here of what we talked about. And then, good morning, Brenda. And we're going to just do a quick little recap here. So tech support, Ren.
Hi.